Hey guys, so how are we feeling about the bioregulators? Yeah, so unfortunately we're going back to bioregulator land here. I got bad news for you. There's going to be a lot of the same content as Dr. Holtorf, so if you need to go to the bathroom, this could be a good time. I've got my own spin on it, of course, but anyway, regardless, let's go back to the beginning a little bit. So we're going to talk about peptides and bioregulators. Really, it's about bioregulators. And as you all know, these bioregulators now, and I mean, you probably knew coming in, bioregulators are pretty amazing science. Okay, how does this work? Okay, so today, one of the things that is happening from a was happening from a regulatory perspective is I do work with a company that actually supplies one of the brands of bioregulators that Kent sells, which is the Nature's Marvels brand. And one of the things they've been told from a regulatory perspective is that they were going to be having to change the nomenclature to amino acid complexes from bioregulators because somebody doesn't like the word bioregulator or peptides. That actually may change. I have a feeling. Things are moving and shaking in the world, so perhaps this is going to change. So I'm going to be flipping between bioregulators and amino acid complexes. They're the same thing. So we know we're going to talk about how they can positively impact the aging process. I'm going to spotlight my favorite 6, my desert island ones, where they fit into a comprehensive longevity plan, and setting the stage for optimizing your results with bioregulators or amino acid complexes. So some of the things that are happening in the world of peptides these days is we have the GLP-1 wars. Now, I'm not particularly going to be talking about GLP-1s today, but on any given day, you have half the world thinking that GLP-1s are going to save us, and the other half the world thinking that GLP-1s is some kind of a ploy to turn us all into noodles with no muscles. And I think that the truth lives somewhere in the middle, but I think what is true is that GLP-1s as peptides are really changing the landscape of healthcare. And I think that that is part of what's making the world right now a very fun, interesting, and crazy place. And I think it'll be also interesting to see if peptides really start to make a comeback under the new administration. Because a year and a half ago, any of you guys who are in the healthcare, functional or regenerative healthcare space know that there was a real movement by the FDA to kind of start pushing these things out of the market, and now we're seeing them starting to come back. So exciting times. And finally, here's what's really interesting is there's new peptides being brought to market all the time. I was on a call on Wednesday earlier this week, and there's a new peptide. And interestingly enough, they're using a name that a skincare company is using, so I'm not going to use that name. But it is the OS01. Were you on that call? She's nodding. I'm like, you were on that call, right? I was like, OS01, isn't that skin? But no, it's an exercise mimetic. Anyway, the point being that there are new peptides that are being isolated. And what's interesting about peptides, these are fragments of proteins that are naturally occurring in the body. This is why they're so exciting. Is there music? Or was me having a seizure? Okay. All right. Anyway, so we talk about life expectancy. It looks really good in some parts of the world. The US, unfortunately, is kind of lagging behind a little bit. But I think hopefully, if things go in the right direction, we're going to start to see things moving in the right direction. But we talk about longevity, but what we really want, as we all know in this room, if you're sitting here, you know what we're really after is health span, right? I think for the most part, science has solved for longevity. We can keep people alive a really long time. But the point is, can we keep them vibrant? Can we keep them happy and vital and contributing? Can we live the life that we want to live on our terms for as long as we want to? And that's the real problem we want to solve. And I think we're already there, right? I think that if we look back to the Golden Girls, they were my age. We don't look the same at different ages as we did. Our expectations are different. Our mindset is different. Our energy is different. So I think we just want to keep moving that bar up and up and up. The bad news is that historically, frailty is one of the things that comes with age. And this is the thing we want to beat. Because what we want is to go out with a bang, right? We want the switch to get turned off someday while we're mid-stride, mid-sentence, kicking ass somewhere. All right, so we are in the era of biological age reversal. This is a term that we are hearing more and more, and it means different things depending on who you're talking to. We're in the age of regenerative medicine, where I just interviewed a guy on my podcast not too long ago who is injecting exosomes into growth plates in people's knees and regenerating knee cartilage. This is not a thing, right? How many times have we been told, oh, cartilage, you can't grow that back? Apparently you can. Gene therapy, right? Minicircle is a really interesting company. You can get a single injection. Who was it? Ian White earlier was talking about clotho. There is a gene therapy coming down the pipes where you can get an injection, and for 2 years, this little plasmid is going to be secreting clotho into your system systemically. They already have one out there right now with follistatin, which makes it easier for you to build muscle, plus all the cognitive benefits of follistatin. Sorry, stuck on the C here. Stem cell therapies and exosomes. I mean, I'm losing track of how many different types of stem cells. We have Muse cells, V cells, adipose cells, bone marrow cells, autologous cells, like all the different types of stem cells for all the different types of applications. And my favorite, the bioregulators. I've been talking about these for a couple of years, and finally, I feel like they're finally rising to the surface and getting the attention that they desire. Now, once again, I'll be flipping back and forth in this presentation. So if we're going to live a really beautiful, amazing, awesome life, the first thing we need to do is we need to avoid this stuff, right? These are the 4 horsemen, if you will. Metabolic dysfunction, cancer, cardiovascular disease, and neurodegenerative disease. We need to be able to avoid these if we're going to live as long and as well as we want to. Now, the good news is that there are therapies that are turning the clock back in this area. We're not going to talk about those particularly, but we are going to talk a little bit about the theories of aging. There are hundreds of theories of aging. I was shocked to find that out. I'm like, what are you talking about? But of course, nobody agrees on anything, right? Especially not why we age. But we're only going to talk about a couple today. The only ones I wanted to touch on was the hallmarks of aging. The interesting thing about the hallmarks of aging, this talks about how we age at a cellular level. When I started this presentation years ago, it was 9 hallmarks of aging. We are now at 12. I promise you there will be 15, right? So things that have been added, dysbiosis, finally, the gut microbiome is finally starting to get the attention that it deserves. Things like chronic inflammation, inflammaging, is a core reason why we age. We need to be able to turn these things down. We need to get really the immune system online so that it doesn't turn against us as we age. And there is the peptide theory of aging. Now, you've heard the name of the man who came up with this already, and that is Professor Khavinson, who is the man who came up with this whole bioregulator thing in the first place. So aging is an evolutionarily determined biological process of changes in gene expression, resulting in impaired synthesis of regulatory blah, 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 blah. What does this mean? It means that our DNA stops doing, our genes stop acting the way they're supposed to as we age. And so therefore, that healing on the fly that we're able to do as children, we're no longer able to do as we age. Right? We're still able to do a lot, but we can't do enough. So how do we tap into the body's system of repairing DNA so that those genes can keep doing what they do for us and we can keep replenishing as we're moving? And this is where the short peptides, the bioregulator peptides, come into play. So these are the tiniest of peptides. And as Dr. Holtorf said a minute ago, they don't have receptors because they don't need them. Because they can get straight into the cell, they can bind to DNA, and they can therefore activate genes and upregulate the production of proteins at a cellular level. So they're going right to the motherboard. They're not even bothering with cascades here. So some of the things that we see that they do is that they regulate gene expression, protein synthesis, they stimulate proliferation and differentiation, suppress cell apoptosis, to restore the function of various organs. In animal studies, he talked about the mouse study with the BRCA gene. That was Villon and Epidolon. So Villon is one of the immune bioregulators, and the pineal gland bioregulator. Both of those were defined as geroprotectors by Professor Khavinson, and they both reduce the incidence of tumors and also the size of them if they even happen in the first place. And then in human studies, again, I'm going to drag you through those 2 studies as well, of elderly and senile-aged persons. Khavinson was able to show that, there's the man himself, that when applied, and not for that long, he was able to show that people didn't die as fast. So what are they? 2 to 4 amino acid chains. They're powerful epigenetic switches. They restore homeostasis and youthful gene expression. Now, why I want to lean on this a little bit is one of the things that we need to remember is that before we can optimize, we need to restore balance. And this is where the bioregulators really shine. I found in the communities where I work with people, and if I'm working with clients, if somebody's coming in a hot mess, we can't optimize. We have to quench the fire. We have to get them rebalanced before we can get them to work even more, to be more functional. And finally, we know that endogenous levels are high when we're young. So whenever we see something that is really plentiful in youth and it starts to tank as we age, we know that we've gotten onto something that we need to restore. So where do you get them from? They're either extracts from animal tissues or they can be synthetically derived. So this is a big discussion in the space where we can get synthetic bioregulators or we can get the oral bioregulators that are often derived from animal tissue. And they are different. They signal, they act differently in the cell, they work differently in the body, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a little while. And as I said earlier, they cross cellular and mitochondrial membranes, they get into the nucleus of the cell, and they activate and repair DNA. So the repair of DNA is a really interesting point, and I think that this is something that a lot more people are talking about, and that is that the bioregulators, is it that they just activate the DNA, or is it possible that they're restoring the DNA's ability to repair itself and do its work? And I think that's still a little bit of a conversation that's going on, but it's a really interesting angle on this discussion about the bioregulator peptides. Okay, so there are currently on the market, or at least there were until Kent came along, and I think he's going to be bringing more, 21 amino acid complexes that are available commercially. And we see here a kind of like a parade of all of the major tissues, glands, and organs of the human body. And when we do these programs, I'm running a year bioregulator programs in my community. We have Bill Lawrence, who was working with Professor Khavinson until he passed away, and Bill Lawrence's studies are still ongoing. What we're doing is we're using these 21 and orchestrating kind of protocols over year 1 to 2 to 3 years. And the way that I like people to think about this is think of if you have the tread on your tires wears down as you age. What we're trying to do is restore the tread on the tires so you don't have to get new tires. Kind of cool. All right. Oh, I forgot. Thymus, kidneys, and muscle. Okay, so these are my top 6 amino acid complexes. These are, if I was stuck on a desert island, these are the ones I would have to have with me. There's the pineal gland bioregulator. Now there's a way, I don't know if I can access it. No, I can't. Can I go back? Yeah, okay, got it, the red button. Okay, there's a way sometimes if I can hit the pineal one, then I get another slide, but I'm not going to get another one. So the pineal gland bioregulator, I think you've kind of gone through these with Dr. Holtorf. I'm briefly going to talk about why I've picked each one. Pineal gland, little pine nut-shaped gland in the center of your brain, it runs the show. It's a tiny little thing. It restores melatonin production. It actually restores, normalizes melatonin production, particularly in elderly adults. We see people, and people with dysregulated sleep, we see people restoring their normal sleep cycles if they have dysregulated sleep cycles. It activates telomerase. This is the enzyme that restores the telomeres on the ends of your DNA. It also has a master endocrine effect, right? It's kind of like the master conductor for the endocrine system of the body. So we very often will use the pineal gland bioregulator as part of a stack when we're trying to rebalance hormones, reactivate glands, and stuff like that. And there's a 4th thing I'm forgetting, but it'll come back to me. The thymus gland bioregulator is pretty self-explanatory. The thing that's going to get us in the end is an immune system that's either over-functioning or under-functioning. And that thymus gland bioregulator helps to rebalance things, right? We have peptides. We have thymosin alpha-1, we have thymosin beta-4, we have all these thymus peptides. they are not as modulatory as the thymus bioregulator. And this is the thing that I'll have a slide a little while about this. This is the superpower of the bioregulator, is that it neither boosts nor suppresses, it normalizes. Okay? So this is one of the reasons why so many people believe and why we're seeing that they seem to be so safe, because you kind of can't go wrong. Right? You can take a thyroid bioregulator and you can give it to someone who's either hyper or hypothyroid, and it'll help to normalize their thyroid function. It's pretty cool. Now, there's no T3 in there, there's no T4. You're going to have to take care of that separately, but it's about regenerating thyroid. The blood vessel bioregulator, look, we know that there's nothing good that happens in the body unless the blood vessels at a macro and a micro level are in good shape. And so this is about restoring the function of the endothelium. The brain bioregulator, which, as Dr. Holtorf mentioned a little while ago, has an unfortunate name, which is pinealon, which means that it gets super confused with the pineal gland bioregulator because everybody thinks it's the pineal gland bioregulator, only it's not. But it does act on the pineal gland, only it's more of a central nervous system bioregulator. We need that. We need that for the whole body. We then have liver. The liver bioregulator is, well, it's the liver. It helps to normalize triglycerides. It helps to normalize cholesterol. It helps to normalize detoxification pathways in the body. And finally, cartilage. And a lot of people will often say to me, well, why would you pick cartilage? Like, why wouldn't you pick heart or, anything else? Because in my mind, the cartilage is foundational to every single organ in the body. Because what this cartilage bioregulator can do is it upregulates the production of collagen and elastin. And collagen and elastin is foundationally critical to the function of every organ and system in your body, including your bones, your kidneys, your pancreas, your lungs, your liver, all the things. Just ask anybody with EDS and they'll tell you. Collagen and elastin is really important. Okay, now here's another thing this is one of those things that it's one of my pet peeves, and so I put it into my presentation because it really drives me crazy that people get these things mixed up a lot. Every bioregulator has at least 3 names. And the reason why this is important is because depending on the name of the bioregulator will tell you what form it is and will determine its dosage. For the longest time, we had people running around saying, oh, epidolon, that's 10 milligrams a day for 10 days or 20 days. The problem is that what they were referring to was actually epithalamin. Epithalamin is what Khavinson used in those elderly and old people studies. Epithalamin is the actual extract from pineal glands of young calves that have been prepared as an intramuscular injection. You can't even find that stuff in North America. You'd have to go to Russia to find it if they're even making it anymore. So epithalamin is 10 milligrams. Endolutin, which is the oral extract, that's what you're going to get in the capsules, that's also 10 milligrams. Epidolon is actually the synthetic pineal gland bioregulator, and that's measured in micrograms. So 100 micrograms, 500 micrograms. Sometimes we'll give someone a milligram, like 1,000 micrograms, which is a milligram, but it's not 10. Okay? So we're all clear here. This whole room now knows every bioregulator has 3 different names. Each name refers to a different form of the bioregulator and affects its dosage. I can sleep. Okay, modulation, this is the thing I was talking about. They neither boost nor suppress, they just hold things steady. All right, Khavinson's research. Dr. Holtorf was talking about this earlier. This is the 12-year study. He took 60 to 74-year-olds. What's interesting here is he's followed them for 6 years and then for 12 years. What's really interesting is these people only got given the bioregulators for 2 of those years. Now, after 6 years, check it out. The control's 13.6% mortality rate, and people who got epithalamin, they only got epithalamin. They didn't get anything else. There's no other bioregulators here. Had only 8.5% mortality, which is pretty impressive. It gets even more impressive after 12 years. Now we have half the mortality rate in the epithalamin group. So now he decided to up the ante. He went and found even older people. And he now only followed them for 6 years because he didn't actually expect them to live that long. After 6 years, 88% mortality rate in his controls. The epithalamin group, again, had half the mortality rate at only 44%. But look, when he added the thymus bioregulator, look at that, which is thymolin, by the way, 33% mortality. 11% more people survived. So the good news is that talks about the importance of the immune system. The other cool thing is that don't forget that the pineal gland bioregulator also very much impacts immunity. It actually works on the thymus gland as well. All right. This is all of those people in those studies. So not only did they not die, not dying is very cool, but they also had a better quality of life. They had better bone density, they were happier, they slept better, which is not surprising because their pineal gland was producing melatonin like it was supposed to. They had a better sense of well-being, improved cardiovascular function, and improved endocrine function. So basically, all of the foundational elements that we're looking for health came up. So it wasn't just about living longer, it was about being healthier. So here are a couple more clinical trials and applications for the bioregulators. In traumatic brain injury patients, they had 72 patients aged like from kids all the way up to elderly people. They were given Pineolon by mouth at 200 micrograms twice a day for 30 days. Actually, that's wrong. That should be 20 milligrams. In addition to conventional therapies. So this is what's really another superpower of the bioregulators is they work really well with conventional medicine. So we don't have to throw away the baby with the bathwater here. We don't have to shun what is good from allopathic medicine in order to use the bioregulators. We can use them to augment and to make it better when necessary. In our control group, they only got conventional therapies. The test subjects showed a reduction in duration and intensity of headaches, plus better memory, speech, info processing, and emotional stability because they got the pineal gland bioregulator. Our next clinical trial is using Cartilax, the cartilage bioregulator. We now had 63 patients who had a combination of these different osteo conditions. The controls only received conventional treatment. The test subjects experienced reduced pain and increased mobility of joints in 65 to 72% of cases, and I believe the time is not on here, but I believe this was after 3 months of therapy. All right, Bill Lawrence is the American doc that Dr. Holthoff was referring to, who's been doing this ongoing research now for 4 years. It's a clinical trial. He's got a couple of hundred people in there right now. He's cycling them through in a very deliberate way through all of the bioregulators, the DNA methylation study, 2-year study results, 124 participants. After the 2 years, they saw an average decrease in epigenetic age of almost 5 years, which represents an all-cause mortality risk reduction of 56%. Even those who were already using these bioregulators before the study improved their longevity. And Bill Lawrence is the guy who's really exploring this idea of could it be that what the bioregulators are really doing is restoring DNA's ability to repair itself. Let's go. Okay, and then there's the telomere study. I think you've heard this before. I'm going to whip through this file, this slide. So he's seeing an average decrease in biological age of 20 years. But here's something that's interesting. When I first interviewed Bill Lawrence, and I think on the podcast we have now 3 interviews, and I'm having the next one coming up for an update. There were 2 participants who saw no improvement in their biological age. So, of course, Eagle Eye Nat, during the podcast, is like, wait a minute, what about those 2? How come they didn't get any younger? What's wrong with them? And it was stress. He said, Nat, I know these people, every one of them, intimately well. And those 2 people have been under colossal stress for the last year. And in their case, they didn't see any reduction in biological age. And this really gets to what I think is the core of my presentation and any presentation, and that is that we cannot get around the fact that if we don't take care of the foundational pieces of our health, none of this fancy stuff is going to do much for us. If your body's on fire, if you're on a constant state of panic and upheaval, if we don't learn to mitigate stress and to manage it for ourselves, a lot of this stuff is not going to be able to work for us. So this is really just about, I want to finish on time because these guys are so far behind. There's a couple of stories I was going to bring you just from my community. because these are more practical examples. I had an 86-year-old man. He was getting up to go to the bathroom like 4 times a night, 5 times a night, which meant that he wasn't sleeping, and so he was exhausted and he couldn't remember anything. We gave him the prostate and the blood vessel bioregulator after 30 days, and all of a sudden, nighttime visits go down to once. And what we would do, the way that I'll run these protocols, is I'll do a 30-day protocol, and very often in a case like this, I'll keep it going at 10 days a month for a couple of months, just to kind of cement it in, and then back off and maybe go back to it if the symptoms come back. I've had women who get their menstrual cycle back. Not postmenopausal 20 years after menopause women, but younger women who are still cycling, who for whatever reason have lost their cycle. They're doing all the things, right? And they're still stuck. And sometimes a 30 or 60-day run of the pineal gland bioregulator with the ovarian bioregulator gets things going again. It just really brings energy back to the system. Now that's a lot of words. This breaks every rule of creating slides. All this is a testimonial from someone who'd been dealing with Hashimoto's for years, and she'd been working with her naturopath, and it wasn't until she brought that thyroid bioregulator into the picture after 30 days, her naturopath just about fell off her chair. She was basically, her Hashimoto's disappeared. Now, I will tell you, I have a lot of people who've, like, with Hashimoto's, who've run out the thyroid bioregulator and come back after a month and said, look, it didn't do anything. I'm like, look, it's not a one and done. It's not a silver bullet. You got to keep hacking away at these things, but sometimes it's the missing piece. Sometimes we need to bring energy back to that gland and give it the power to heal itself, and that becomes the final piece. Okay. Fast facts. Most commonly, I want to say that most commonly we don't use these alone. We use them in stacks, right? We'll very often find the blood vessel bioregulator as part of a stack. The pineal gland and or the central nervous system bioregulator will also very often show up in these stacks, and then we start to build in systems, right? So I'm going to go through a couple of common stacks in a minute. I will often, if there's an imbalance in the system, I will often start with a 30-day protocol, and then, like I said, do 1 or 2 or 3 months of 10-day cycles, depending on the person. As Dr. Holtorf said a minute ago, this is a lot of art within science, right? So there's not a prescription for any one thing that's been identified at this point. There's feeling the way, understanding what people are dealing with, understanding all of the other things that you're bringing to the table, understanding how are we supporting cellular health? How are we managing inflammation? Are we supporting mitochondria? What are we doing to reduce the senescent cell load in the body? And then how do we bring these things in to imagine that we're now signaling, giving the body the signals and the power to heal from within? Okay, the ultimate anti-aging stack: pineal, thymus, blood vessel. If we had to pick 3, this would be the stack. If you're someone who is around 40 to 50 years of age, you might repeat this 30 days, twice a year. As we age, we might do it 3 times a year or 4 times a year. The ultimate brain health stack. Well, we're going to focus on circulation, the central nervous system, and the pineal gland. Metabolic health. I don't know if you know anybody who's dealing with this, but I sure do. So can we help the pancreas, the liver, and then the blood vessel? Can we also throw in the stomach bioregulator? Because what's the thing that nobody is producing these days? Yeah, stomach acid, digestive enzymes. That stomach bioregulator helps to bring that back, right? So I would include the stomach bioregulator in there for sure. All right. The one peptide I am going to talk about is GHKCU. I call it the orphan bioregulator. It's a 3-amino acid peptide. It acts on over 3,900 genes in the human body. It is a super power for skin. It reduces wrinkles, and it helps with photo damage. There are thousands of papers on GHK copper. It can be applied topically. It can be applied by injection, and it can also be taken orally. Now, we're finding more and more people are making it as a liposome. It's super effective. Okay, so just to give you an idea, all right? I can't go deep into GHK because we could be here for a really long time. Look at this. 32.1% of human genes are gene expression is flipped, changed by 50%. Our levels of GHKCU plummet as we age. When we start to bring them back, we're starting to restore the body's ability to heal itself. There's evidence that it reverses the gene silencing that drives aging. It's currently being studied for the treatment of certain cancers. It's being studied for cognitive benefits and neurodegenerative diseases. It has the ability to deliver non-toxic copper into brain cells. Like, how cool is that? Super cool. I think it's cool. It's incredibly powerful for wound healing and tissue remodeling. It helps to reduce scarring. I once had a small surgical procedure in a place that people told me, this is going to scar really badly. I'm like, okay, sure, we'll talk about that. I went home, I applied my GHKCU, my BPC, my TB4 fragment, no scar. So GHK is very powerful. It has a whole role even in healing of nerves, stimulates the production of collagen and elastin, like our cartilage bioregulators. It's got antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, skin rejuvenation, hair restoration. Oh my God, we just one-stop shop. It's amazing. All right, laying a powerful foundation. We're getting to the end. I have 1 second left. Again, like I said before, we cannot get away from the fact that if we're not doing all of these other things, all of this fancy stuff is not going to be as effective for us. It's going to take a lot more, and if it even does anything in the first place. In my mind, what you eat, what you don't eat is just as important. Fasting, whether you're doing an intermittent fast, whether you're doing a fast mimicking diet, whether you're doing water fast, I don't care, but every once in a while we must stop eating and give our bodies a time to turn inward and do the cleanup that it needs to do. Exercise and movement. I mean, you know, every time, like the other night when we were talking about the exercise mimetic peptide, it makes me laugh, right? Because we're so predictable. We're always looking for the shortcut. You got to move your body. I don't care how many exercise mimetics are out there, we've got to exercise. If you don't use it, you are going to lose it. And exercise and movement are two different things, so please keep moving. Sleep and recovery, stress, resilience, having our hormones balanced, and taking care of our microbiome. That little microbiome, those little millions of organisms in there are really the ones running the show. So here are some of the things. I'm not going to spend much time here, whoops, but I do want to point out one thing. Here are some of the things that I think are some of the tools I have found to be very helpful. The one thing that I want to bring your attention down to the bottom where it says glyphosates. Quest Biotics is a brand of probiotics where they actually have a probiotic strain in there that breaks down glyphosate in the gut. I do believe, and if Martha Carlin's around here somewhere, if you catch her, get her to talk to you a little bit about glyphosate for a minute. It's going to scare the crap out of you, but we have got to figure out ways to clear this stuff out of our systems because it's disabling our body's ability to absorb nutrients and to function properly at a cellular level. All right, so 3 powerful lifestyle habits if I had to get it down to 3: fasting, sauna, meditation or breath work, and our bonus is seeing morning light within an hour of sunrise. Okay, the other thing is FDN is here. Their tagline, test, don't guess. Look, he's even in the room. I had no idea you were here. Test, don't guess. Okay, you don't know something's changing unless you tested it and got a baseline. So please get baselines and then do your interventions before you decide if it's working or not working. And the last thing is, Sandy had asked me, she said, you know, I want to talk about pets. And our pets can biohack too. Unfortunately, that third screen there where my dog is standing, that's a video, and it doesn't work. She's 16 years old. I showed, if you find me in the hall later, get me to show you this video. She moves like she's a puppy. This dog gets red light therapy. She hangs out on my cloud PMF mat. She gets BPC 157. She gets a, as of yet, unreleased stem cell release product that I think saved her life last year when she had a back problem. People told me I was going to have to put her down. And she also takes beam minerals. So what's good for the goose is really good for the gander because guess where they do all that research? On our pets. So don't forget your pets. Sometimes you need a smaller dose, but we can bring them along and they can live longer, healthier, and amazing lives just like us. And last but not least, gratitude. I don't think Benazadi's in here, but he's going to talk to you about vitamin G. I came up with vitamin J last time, vitamin joy, community and purpose. These are the things, this is the glue that gives us the fuel and gives us the energy to do all of the other things. Yes? So thank you so much. My name is Nathalie Niddam.